So after Nick Saban retired and Kalen Deboer took over the program, you knew it might take a second for Bama to adapt to the new culture. But it's safe to say that in 2024, Alabama did not perform up to the Alabama standard. They were undisciplined, Jalen Milroe made mistakes, you had Malachi Moore crashing out and kicking the ball after losing to Vanderbilt. This was just not the same Bama team that we have seen over the last decade or so. But I'm here to tell you why that was just a one-time thing. Because Bama has a lot of transfers and guys lined up, they have a lot of talent down the pipeline, and now that Debeor has a feel for what running this program is like, I fully expect to see a bounce back season in 2025, and I want to talk all about it. But before I begin, I would really appreciate it if you would drop a like and subscribe. It only takes 5 seconds, plus you can always change your mind. We are on the road to 50,000 subscribers, and with your support, I believe that we can get there super fast. Alright, so one of the most glaring problems for Alabama in 2024 was a lack of discipline, particularly in crucial moments. The team averaged just under 9 penalties a game, ranking 7th highest in all of the FBS. And as I already mentioned, against Vanderbilt, Malachi Moore had an emotional outburst late in the game, shoving the opposing quarterback Diego Pavia and kicking the football. It looked so ridiculous on live TV. Like at the time I thought he was going to lose some draft stock from that, but it really just showed the complete culture shift that can happen in a very short amount of time when you change coaches. It of course resulted in an unsportsmanlike conduct penalty, even though the game was already over, and in the loss to Tennessee, wide receiver Kendrick Law retaliated against an opponent, drawing a costly 15-yard penalty that turned a manageable 4th and 7 into a nearly impossible 4th and 23. So incidents like these really highlighted a concerning trend that many people attributed to the absence of Nick Saban's strict leadership. And again, I know coaches are different and they have different philosophies, but if I was Debeor this offseason, I would have a talk with Saban. I'd see some of the things that he did and just kind of implement it. Again, I'm not saying you have to do everything that he did, but you just got to take some of the strategies and some of the concepts and you have to implement it. And the true reality of things is that Jalen Milroe's performance was a microcosm of the team's inconsistency. While he did show flashes of brilliance every now and then throughout the season, completing 64.3% of his passes for 2,844 yards and 16 touchdowns, he also threw 11 interceptions, but his dual threat capabilities were evident with 726 rushing yards and an impressive 20 rushing touchdowns. But again, it was his passing accuracy that remained a concern throughout the season. And I know bowl games don't really matter anymore, but the way he closed out the season against Michigan was rough. I mean, he looked like he shouldn't have even been drafted. But I do know scouts don't really look at bowl games. Again, I already said that. But still, I mean, it was just... He looked brutal. The Michigan defense took advantage of him in every single way. And I know the conditions were sloppy too, so that's another thing. And then switching over to the defensive side of things, the transition to Kane Wommack's 4-2-5 swarm defense from Saban's traditional 3-4 scheme presented challenges, especially early on. The defense allowed 418 total yards and 40 points in the shocking loss to Vanderbilt, but even outside of that, the thing that Bama just didn't have was consistency. At times they looked like a team that could contend, but then the next week they would play trash against a team that should not have even competed against them. Like, Vandy should not have beat them. I know Diego Pavia was a dog and he played like a dog in that game. He had one of the best games of his college career, but still, that would have never happened under Nick Saban. And the funniest thing about that loss was the clip that came out a few weeks before that game happened of Nick Saban saying that Vanderbilt is the only school in the SEC that is easy to play at. But yeah, last season is over and Kalen Deboer is now looking to get this program back to its dominating ways over this offseason. So I want to talk about what Bama has done over the last few weeks in the transfer portal. Because with the way that college football operates now, it's all a business and the transfer portal really is everything. I know continuity is still very important, but teams are really going to build through trying to get the highest prospects to come in. So the first guy that came in that I want to talk about is Jalen Washington. He will be a redshirt senior coming over from Washington. He has 1 year of eligibility after his arrival to Tuscaloosa, and he was a 3-star prospect out of Hemp Hill, Texas. So here's kind of the deal on him. After redshirting as a true freshman, he'd get plenty of work as a backup ball carrier for the Ragin' Cajuns, racking up 229 career carries for 1,343 yards. So that's some impressive stuff, and he also had 9 touchdowns through the next 3 seasons in Lafayette. At 5'9", 224 pounds, the veteran should serve as a change of pace backup option for a running back room that will once again be led by Jalen Milroe. Alabama suffered a huge transfer portal blow with Justice Haynes leaving for Michigan, so bringing in a very similar back in terms of frame and build like Washington to fill the gap is a smart move for Kalen Deboer's staff. Also, Washington had 5 scores this past season, so his career has only been trending upwards, and his team won 10 games and hosted the Sun Belt Championship. Washington entered the transfer portal following the conclusion of Louisiana's season and was a target for both Alabama and West Virginia. He took an official visit to Tuscaloosa this past weekend, and that was enough for him to commit to the Crimson Tide on Monday. And I mean, I completely get it. I've watched the video on YouTube about Alabama's facility. It is just outstanding, and I completely understand why the school poured so much money into it, because that's how they're going to ultimately land all these transfers. Because without Nick Saban, there has to be some enticing things. I mean, I know at the end of the day, Alabama is Alabama. They're a historic program, but I do think without Nick Saban, it's going to take a lot more for them to convince these 5 stars to constantly come in. The next transfer I want to talk about is Isaiah Horton, a 6'4" receiver from Miami. He's 205 pounds, so not like the biggest frame, but he has insane raw talent. He was very productive last year and was one of Cam Ward's go-to targets, but it definitely does help to have a guy like Ward as your QB, who is projected to most likely be the top QB taken in the draft. Last season, he had 56 receptions, 616 yards, 5 touchdowns, and Ryan Williams had 8 touchdowns last year. So that kind of shows you the type of performance that Isaiah Horton had. And his own teammates at Miami had nothing but good things to say about him following his departure. Like, they're getting an absolute dog. He is a one-on-one nightmare, which is a quote that I just love. And then another guy said that he has a long and tall body. So I'm really excited to see what Horton can do alongside Ryan Williams. And now to move on to talk about the QB situation, which is kind of the underlying thing that like everybody knows is the biggest issue. Alabama didn't pursue a quarterback in the transfer portal, meaning there are currently 3 potential options on the roster to take the reins. Redshirt junior Ty Simpson, redshirt sophomore Austin Mack, and incoming true freshman Kalen Russell. Simpson is the most experienced of the trio, serving as the backup to Milroe for the past 2 seasons. Over 2023 and 24, he appeared in 12 games, completing 24 of 45 passes for 346 yards and rushing 22 times for 130 yards with 3 scores. His lone score last fall came on a 15-yard rush in the season opener against Western Kentucky. Simpson was a 5-star prospect and the number 3 QB in the 2022 class, originally signing with the Crimson Tide under former head coach Nick Saban. So he's more of a dual threat to me. Austin Mack might have the early leg up to be the successor to Milroe due to his experience in Debeor's system. He signed with Washington as a top 100 recruit in 2023 and followed his head coach to Alabama last offseason. Mack didn't appear in a game with the Huskies because of course, Michael Penix Jr., but he completed 2 or 3 passes for 39 yards and 1 touchdown this past season. He has tremendous size at 6'6", 236 pounds, and the California native is a threat with his big arm. During his senior season at Folsom High School, Mack completed 269 of 382 passes for 3,498 yards with 40 touchdowns to just 5 interceptions. So those are just absurd numbers, but I know that's kind of typical for a high school quarterback that commits to a college. And then Russell is the lone newcomer to the quarterback room at Alabama after signing with the program in December. He was forced to exit the Under Armour All-American game early after twisting his ankle, and the extent of that injury remains unclear. Regardless, Russell is immensely talented as he was a 5-star prospect and the number 2 overall recruit in the 2025 class. He dices up offenses through the air and also on the ground. Russell completed 238 of 343 passes for 4,177 yards with 55 touchdowns to 4 interceptions, along with 33 carries for 321 yards and 3 touchdowns as a senior. He led Duncanville to the state semifinals a year after securing a 15-0 record and state championship. So yeah, it's safe to say the dude was an absolute dog in high school, and I can't wait to see how his play translates to the college level, no matter how long the wait is until we actually get to see him play. So all in all, Alabama has a lot to figure out, and Debeor has a lot of culture changing to do. If I were him, like I mentioned earlier, I would actually just swallow my pride and go to Saban and implement some of his advice, and he may already be doing that. I mean, who am I to judge? So that's really all I have to say for this video. Thank you all so much if you made it to this point, and let me know in the comments below what your favorite transfer portal acquisition was. Also, if you enjoyed this video and haven't yet, please be sure to drop a like and subscribe, because your support truly does mean the world. And also, let me know what you would like to see next, and until then, I will see you all later.